Welcome to Victoria Rumble Room, where we dig into the issues of Greater Victoria. And I'm Robin Adair. Sitting across town from me, but somehow next to me, is John Juricic, the always lovable and challenging. John, great to see
you. The adjectives you used to describe me are just fascinating. Challenging is a new one, and it's so appropriate. It's so appropriate.
I don't have trouble finding adjectives for you, John. I never have.
I live in a world where there's quite possibly only one or two people that can work with me. You're one of them. My wife is the other.
I just, off the very top, I have to compliment the weatherman. We've had the best week of weather in Victoria since last year. It's been getting up into the 20s. It's fantastic, and we deserve it, John.
It makes everything so much easier. We live in challenging times, and just all around there. I've talked now with several folks over the past week who are quite discouraged about the way that the pandemic has gone, and just feeling that they just don't have any energy for this third, fourth, fifth wave, whatever the hell it is, and this weather makes such a difference.
It really does. I want to just talk about a couple of things before we get to our special guest. Off the top, of course, the provincial budget is coming up. We had the provincial throne speech this week, and John Horgan and his provincial government have a lot of work to get the economy back up on its feet, and at the same time come up with some sort of an ongoing strategy for this COVID terror that we're dealing with, because this isn't going to be over, John. We'll get our vaccines, but it's not the end of the COVID. It's not the end of vaccines. It's not the end of us having to be very careful in the future. I think we're going to be moving into a different world very soon. And I'm discouraged by that, but very pleased that we're getting our shots finally.
Well, there's this notion that we're going to get back to normal. I think there will never be a normal. There will be a new normal. And I'm not exactly sure what that looks like, but it won't be like it was 18 months ago when this all started. And no one's solved what a post-pandemic economy will look like. And so it's hard to criticize a budget speech, a throne speech, when we don't really know yet. We don't have evidence of what will work because we don't know what the new normal looks like. And so I'm encouraged by the fact that we are talking about it. I hope that we'll get some speakers on to dive more deeply into what it looks like. But there's no template. Where's the template that we learned about in business school? How to recover economy in a post-pandemic environment.
So it's a guessing game. Even for the government, it's a guessing game.
Right.
We're going to be talking in a few moments' time to Christine Willow, who is the chair of the Victoria Harbour Authority. And they are kind of preparing themselves for this next summer without cruise ships coming to Victoria. So we're going to be talking about that and look forward to it. Before we talk to her, I just want to touch on something. We had the head of the Victoria Police Union on last week, Matt Waterman, and we were talking optimistically about the ACT program, which is the Assertiveness Community Treatment Program, where officers go with healthcare workers and mental health care workers to deal with the homeless, to help people that are on the street, to help people that are disadvantaged. It's been very successful. And unfortunately, we heard last week that the Victoria Council approved the police budget, which means an increase to the police budget, but did not approve ACT. They did not approve this program with with police officers going out with healthcare workers. And that was done before. And what we need to do now is relook at this. We probably need to ask the police chief to go back to city council now, retable this. We have a different council. We have a new configuration. The problem is much worse than it was 6 months ago. I suggest City Hall needs to relook at this.
1,000% supportive of what you just said. I would just say everything you say again. There are not many solutions, if any, to the situation that we're in. I've just alluded to that. This was one of them. And to have this not revoted on and forwarded is startling and shocking. Totally support what you're saying, Robin. It's one of the few solutions that numerous people that I've talked to, say would work.
Well, Dale Manick, the police chief, has been very clear that he wants this program to continue. And I should mention that Esquimalt Council, because it's Victoria and Esquimalt that are covered by the Victoria Police Force, Esquimalt Council supported the ACT program. It was Victoria Council, and it was Victoria Council several months ago before the by-election. And I believe if this goes back down to this council, it will pass. But we don't have much time because the budget's going through very soon. So I'm really hoping that the police will take this back to council and council does something positive.
Usually in investigative dialogue or conversation, you can sort of track how a decision, we got to a certain decision. Here are the points. And we could disagree on those decision points, okay? But depending on your philosophy on how things should be fixed. I can't determine one for this program. Why is this not being voted? Where is the decision points that don't want to support this program? I don't know what they are.
Well, it costs money. It's expensive, but we estimate, I mean, both the police union and I've heard people at City Hall estimate that we're about 30 police officers short for Victoria Esquimalt. So there's already an overall problem of a shortage of police officers. And this program is not police officers going in and arresting or police officers going in and being tough. They're going in to protect the healthcare workers, to let them do their job. The healthcare workers are very upset about this because a lot of social workers, healthcare workers, mental health care workers, they want to get in and help those people, but they'll feel more secure if standing by, maybe standing back a little bit, is a police officer, often in plain clothes, who's just there to make sure everything runs smoothly.
Not supporting the renewal of this program makes 0 sense.
Well, we agree on that. So we're going to move on now, and we are going to introduce our guest for today. And I'm very excited about Christine Willow coming to join us and talk about the tourism industry in general, and of course the Harbour in particular. I've known Christine for about 20 years now, and she and Frank Burry were behind the highly successful Destinations program. They ran a company called Chemistry Consulting for many years. They placed thousands upon thousands of people into the tourism and hospitality sector. And they've both made such a big mark in this city. Frank went on to become the chair of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce, and this year is actually getting recognized with the Governor's Achievement Award, the Governor's Award of Distinction, and well-deserved to Frank. And Christine has also gone on to a lot of important posts, and they all have to do with hospitality and tourism. She was actually the president of the Destinations Victoria organization, and that's a very important part of our fabric in this community. And now today chairs the Victoria Harbour Authority. And so we're very pleased to have Christine here.
Well, good morning, Christine. So great to have you here. And look at that sun that's surrounding your background. And, you know, we've had such a glorious week. It just showcases what a beautiful place that we live in. And when we're able to really let people know that they got to come here.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, it doesn't even need to be sunny. I think it's a wonderful place. Even when it's raining, we've just got such a diverse culture and other things to do that it's always great to visit.
Well, Christine, the word is out that Victoria is beautiful, and certainly people love to come here. But right now, a lot of people can't come here, especially our American neighbors. The land border's been closed. And now the cruise ships are not coming to Victoria this summer. How big a setback is this for Victoria?
It's a significant setback for Greater Victoria, obviously for the Harbour Authority, but the impact I think that cruise has in general, and it's not just cruise, it's any marine traffic, because we've got the Coho ferry, we've got the Clipper, you know, we've got the leisure boater that comes across the border. All those things are really significant.
Now, are they coming back? Are some of those coming back?
Well, not until the international borders are open. Right now, nothing's open. So, you know, we might have a boater that's from Vancouver or up island coming down island or that kind of thing. But that's not significant enough to replace what we've lost or what we're losing. You know, the biggest challenge really is no plan. when you go through uncertainty and you go through crisis, I think all of us can attest to the fact that if we see, okay, things are bad, but here's the steps we need to do to fix it, or here's what needs to be in place or happen before things can change again and get better, it gives us something to look forward to strive towards, some hope. It allows us to do planning. That's not there. And that's probably, this is my personal view, and I think others share it as well, the biggest obstacle that we currently have. There is no plan for any kind of safe resumption of whether that's cruise, opening our borders, or international travel in general. So we don't know what to shoot for. As a business, I wouldn't know if I need to stretch my finances for 3 months, 6 months, another year before I have any kind of revenue streams come in. And that makes it difficult. I can't even go to the bank and say, you know what, I only need 6 months because I know, in September or whatever the date is, or somewhere around there, I can expect to have visitors come again. I can't do that. And that makes it really difficult, that uncertainty.
This is where I'm going to sort of take us into a rather human / personal question for you and your industry. This is certainly difficult for all industry, especially tourism, in my personal opinion, hasn't been given or received the respect or the help that it's absolutely been required over the past year. That's what I believe. What are some of the human stories of people that can't do any planning? Their businesses are struggling. There's no hope of when this might change. Tell us how people are dealing with this. Like on a personal level, are we seeing higher cases of mental illness or are issues with families emerging? Tell us that, because I don't think folks know that. Tourism's closed. We don't know when it's back. Yeah. Whatever. No. Tell us some of those stories, Christine.
Well, I don't know if I have, specific stories. I can tell you examples. Well, first of all, I agree that tourism has been significantly more impacted, unequally impacted than perhaps other industries. We know some industries have thrived through this crisis. Construction's still going, tech is doing its thing and doing well. So disproportionately and unequally, we've been impacted in the tourism hospitality industry. And I think when people think of tourism and hospitality, they think of hotels and restaurants, perhaps some sightseeing, but it's the transportation sector. It's the Marydale Cider up island, it's zip lining out on the West Shore. Those are all businesses that are significantly impacted. If you want a human story, a lot of our industry has multi-generational families working in it. So mom or dad or the main breadwinner may be in a management position or a senior position within the industry, has been impacted, either with a job loss or significant amount of stress because they're now the one doing 3 or 4 jobs within their business because everyone has reduced and cut back in order to make ends meet. So there's that stress. But now they have a 15 or 16-year-old son, and I know this in my own family, who is looking towards what we all did. When you're 16, you get your license. Let's save towards the first car. Let's do that. Let's get a job. And where do most of them get a job? In our industry to start. And now they're impacted. They can't get a job because the industry is either shut completely, or sectors of the industry, or the industry is so greatly reduced, like right now in the restaurant food services industry, that they don't need as many people. They'll maintain their key people, their full-time people, their management, but bringing on those part-time students, and students, minority groups that are greatly impacted by this as well, they're not doing that. So you've got this multi-generational impact in some families that is significant. And in Victoria, it's greatly so because we've had such a fantastic booming tourism hospitality industry here, and it is a significant part of our economy. So when you think of just the Greater Victoria Harbour Authority, the cruise ship industry brings $130 million and has 800 direct and indirect jobs associated with that. That's just us. That's not talking about the hotels. It's not talking about the recreational part of our industry. It's not talking about the attractions that are closed. So just that snippet can tell you how many people, so there's 800 families right there that are significantly impacted by this. And when you talk about the mental health aspect of that, that's where what I said earlier, the uncertainty is the problem.
Right.
If I know, I've got to do this in order to get from, I got to go A, B, C. This is what needs to happen. If we hear from federal or provincial or even municipal levels of government that here's the plan for reopening the borders, not a date, because I think that's unrealistic with the changes and the variants and everything that's happening. But if there's some indication that says, here are the gateposts or the milestones that need to happen in order for us to look at reopening the borders, to reopening travel, international travel, then people can keep an eye on that and can see where things are at. We're working in a vacuum.
Are you part of those discussions? Are you part of those discussions now, Christine? Because I would think the federal government has to be looking long and hard at when it would open that land border. And when we have so many Americans now with vaccines, and from all the reports I'm hearing, a lot of Americans are agitating to start to travel. And those cruise ships, I think this summer are going to go to Alaska. If they can get around this Jones Act, they want to go this summer, because let's face it, if Alaska can't have those cruise ships, a lot of those towns are going to be in much tougher shape than Victoria, percentage-wise.
Yeah.
So, I mean, are you at a table right now? Are you talking to the feds? I mean, what avenues are being explored?
So specifically to the tourism industry, we are part of CLIA, which is the Cruise Line Industry Association, and the Canadian arm of that. So our CEO, Ian Robertson, sits at the table, and we have discussions, and through our communication group, we have discussions in Ottawa. So we try to keep informed and abreast. You also have to remember that for cruise, we're a vast country and tourism is significant across the country, but cruise is the East Coast and the West Coast. So, we're our two bookends, and the West Coast has the highest number of cruise ships visit and traffic because of the Alaska route and along the West Coast. So for us, it's a much bigger impact than it would be in other parts of Canada. The international border in general impacts, of course, all provinces and all areas. And that would impact our other tenants and customers that are along the harbor, whether that's the whale watchers. The Clipper is not our tenant, but they're within the harbor, as is the Coho.
Or people coming to Victoria by ferry. They come across from the Peace Arch crossing and come to Victoria that way, right?
And Accorder's made the decision not to sail, right? And so, even coming up from Washington that way, the Anacortes Ferry. So there's a significant impact, and we are an island, and so you either fly here or you come here by boat, and that's something that we need to be at the table, and we are at the table as much as possible.
So, Christine,
it's hard though, because we're not getting the definitive plan.
Yeah. So it's sometimes therefore often difficult for the CEOs of the various organizations that, like, for you represent in Destination Victoria, for those folks sometimes to be as blunt as might be required. And therefore I feel that I can, because I'm not in that position. I am so pissed and angry that the other government levels of government aren't paying attention to the tourism industry, to the cruise industry, and at the very least saying, we can't give you a definitive pathway, but here's some help to get you there. Treat this industry with the respect it deserves, with all of these families hurting these significant economic impacts. I'm so angry and frustrated with the levels of government that likely you guys can't say, because you're there trying to jockey and trying to position ourselves for within hundreds and hundreds of communities across Canada looking for help.
But there was money through that circuit breaker fund, in all fairness to the provincial government, that came out last week, that in the short term, at least, is going to help with some of the restaurants and avoids people being laid off.
Is it? Do you think
Well,
so?
and it addresses one sector. There are others that are obviously impacted.
Yes.
And John, you're not wrong that it's frustrating and that it seems like there's nothing being done. But in fairness, we, the Harbour Authority, Ian and I did have a meeting with Minister Melanie Mark last week. And so we are talking to them. We are engaging with them. I have to, part of me wants to, just like you, say, come on, government. I don't care, federal, provincial, whoever you are, but, really open up, see
Help
the value
us.
of tourism and work with us.
Yeah.
But the other part of me also understands that, they're knee deep in this health crisis.
Yes.
And so I have to respect that somewhere they have to find a balance. What would be helpful is if our industry becomes more of that voice of the planning.
Yes.
We always seem to be, when I was chair of Tourism Industry Association of BC, it was sometimes hard to get appointments to see ministers. And that's a shame. We're a big, big part of our economy here, in not just Victoria and BC in general,
Yes.
on the island. It's getting better. And sometimes it depends on individuals as things change. The doors are open or the doors are not as widely open through different times within the political agenda. But it's always been a challenge for, and I shouldn't say just government, sometimes our community as well, to really understand what benefits there are to a vibrant tourism and hospitality industry. You and I enjoy an abundance of fantastic restaurants in this city. They're not all supported by locals. They're not all there because of locals. You and I can take our family visitors or our families on a whale watching excursion, go to the Royal BC Museum. All these wonderful things that we have here are significantly supported by those tourists and the travelers that come in. And so, I think sometimes we don't recognize what we love about the city, the tourists love as well. And some of those things are not viable without the tourists, in addition to the local visitor. And,
well, I'm on the board at Craigdarroch Castle, and I can tell you Craigdarroch has gone from 22 or 24 full-time staff down to a skeleton staff, and they're just getting through this year. And a lot of other organizations that rely on a large number of visitors from outside of Victoria to come and visit are they're doing everything they can to get through this, and they have no idea about an end date.
Yeah. And then, when you look at employment, you brought up how many people have lost jobs. They're not sitting at home waiting for doors to open. There's probably a percentage of them that are looking now at career changes or other industries. And so when doors do reopen, are we going to have the right amount of workers that the industry needs in order to operate? Because prior to this pandemic, the tourism and hospitality industry was struggling to find enough employment workers, skilled workers, entry-level workers to do the job. And with the changes that have now happened, and perhaps more people choosing not to have a career in tourism and hospitality, it means that when things do reopen, there's going to be further disruption in our workforce. And it's going to be very difficult for operators to ramp back up. So Craigdarroch Castle might have some recruitment challenges when it comes time to ramping back up and bringing to a full staffing contingent. So those are considerations that I think we need to keep in mind as well.
Total agreement with the kind of scenario you're describing, Christine. And I think it's incumbent on some of our business community members, and in this instance, us in this venue, to go beyond some of the how do I maybe polite, descriptions of what's happening, and just start to say not acceptable anymore. We need some answers. We need some help. And come on, let's giddy up. Come on, help us.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just a major industry, if not arguably the number one industry, in the way that it dominoes into so many places. And we're just going to have to start to raise the volume. And so that's what I think at least I'm trying to do here, and really appreciate the scenario you're painting, Christine. It's not good, and it has to change.
No. Yeah, and it's, so take our downtown. We have a beautiful downtown. That's been our history. So now with the pandemic, there are less workers downtown, more working from home. That's going to continue, not maybe to the same extent as it is now, but businesses are realizing that they don't need to have big offices or as many workers downtown. So retail and the restaurants downtown, the coffee shops, etc., are impacted. So you pull that percentage out. Then you don't have tourists, you pull that percentage out. So the ripple effect to something like the retail sector is significant. And that's what I mean by, it's this pebble, and people don't realize how much tourism impacts other industries. Our education system. We have wonderful colleges and universities. A significant part of their revenue comes from international students. And international students, the number's been reduced. So not having a plan for when borders might reopen or what milestones need to be achieved for safe resumption of tourism and hospitality activities is really the challenge. And I don't know how to say it anywhere else or any other way. Today would have been our first cruise ship of the season. So, it's a significant day for us that it's now the second season that we're not.
Just imagine the volume of people that would have been streaming through our city. Okay.
So I guess,
here's the challenge: the volume of people streaming through our city. There are many not many. There are some in our community that are rather vocal and against cruise ships. And I think, and I'm hoping that they now have perhaps opened their eyes a little bit more about the benefit, not just the impact to themselves.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of curious, Christine, as we're nearing the end of this, and this could just go on and on. I have so many questions to ask you. John touched on the fact that we need to get all more active, and governments need to get more active, and so do business and the community need to get really behind this industry. And I was really pleased to see my friends from Czech TV, Rob Germain, they got behind this project to bring flowers back to the inner harbor along with the city. And I believe there are other sponsors with that as well. That's the kind of community movement we need now as we sit back and wait for the tourists to come, isn't it?
It is. And we are so grateful that Horizon Landscapers and Czech stepped up and helped us with the fact that the flowers, most people don't realize that it's the Harbour Authority, not the City of Victoria, that looks after the Lower Causeway and the beautification of that and the maintenance of that. And so when we found that through our budgets, we wouldn't be able to do that, we had community members and companies step up is fantastic. So yes, there is some of that, but they're also impacted. So if you think of the number of auctions, fundraising, community events that both of you have attended over the years, how many of those prizes and auction prizes come from tourism and hospitality? I would dare say 90%. And so, all those other organizations that have had the benefit of a vibrant tourism hospitality industry because they're able to give donations and support not-for-profits or other organizations and initiatives, that's all fallen by the wayside too. They can't do that. So yes, the businesses need to step up, but they're also suffering themselves. So it's hard. If I can leave one message, it's really all levels of government. Give the respect to some of these wonderful, bright, intelligent leaders in our industry by letting them perhaps even be the lead on putting together the plan of a safe reopening, resumption of tourism activities and businesses. That's the best way to do that. Government is great, and government at all levels has their place, but they're not necessarily the experts. And so listening to the industry and the experts in the industry, I think is, to me, would be a significant step in really moving forward.
As a final word from you, Christine, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on what's the best we can expect for this summer coming. I know a lot of people are looking ahead now. I think people generally are accepting that the cruise ship industry is not coming back this year. What would be your best hope for this summer?
It's going to be very pared down because the domestic travel, which is our hope, which is what we can look forward to, the individual from British Columbia, and hopefully as more vaccinations happen and things improve, also from other provinces, we can have visitors, because people are still wanting to come here from other parts of Canada. That's great, and that's what we can look forward to, but it's not enough. It doesn't replace the international traveler, the dollars the international traveler brings. They're more likely to stay in some of the hotels and eat out, whereas the domestic traveler may do a combination of camping as well as hotel stays. So we'll see some activity, we'll see some resumption, but it's not going to really bring things back until we open the international borders, whenever that is. And that's what we need is the international traveler. It's the foreign currency coming into our market, the activity. And that's going to be, at least another year.
Well, thanks very much, Christine. This is a lot of information to digest, and we all have our fingers crossed for both the tourist industry and, of course, the Victoria Harbour Authority and the cruise ship industry. We need all of these back on their feet as soon as possible, and we'll keep a very close eye on this, John.
Yeah, that's a tough interview. It's very emotional for business people, anyone living in Lower Vancouver Island, to hear how difficult and troubling the consequences of COVID onto our tourism and hospitality industry. It's tough to hear. It's especially tough to hear that there's not a sort of a clear exit point. There's a clear pathway. There isn't. The hope we have is that we're going to get vaccinated. And the sooner we get vaccinated, the sooner we can start to help the variety of industries that really provide a lifeline for our Lower Vancouver Island community.
Well, people in our age cohort are getting vaccinated, and you'll be happy to know, John, that I am getting vaccinated at the end of this week. So, it's gradually moving itself down, but is it going fast enough? We're racing against time. We've got the variants that are moving so quickly. We don't want to see our young people get sick. We need people to get their vaccines as soon as possible.
In fact, so many of the folks that I know are in the process of getting a vaccine. And we got to be really careful that we don't then think this is over, right? Oh, I got a vaccine. It's over. Back to normal. There is no normal. There's not going to be a back to normal. There's going to be back to something that we're going to have to recreate. And we're going to try to get back to as best a community as we can.
The number one profession that people still turn to for information on this, both the vaccine choices, their healthcare choices, and what they need to do, the family doctor. People still turn to the doctor. Doctors are the frontline voice that they need to hear from. I know there's the internet, there's tons of information, lots of opinions out there, but people still should turn to their doctor. And happily, our guest next week is going to be Dr. Aaron Childs, who's a Victoria physician. He knows a lot about the COVID response in our area. He knows a lot about this drive towards going out there without a mask and denying the COVID even is a big problem, which we all know it is. And also nervousness about which vaccines to take. And we're going to get this all from the doctor's perspective. It'll be really interesting hearing from Dr. Aaron Childs.
I can't wait to hear that and interview him next week and understand how, there's so many conspiracy theories that are providing misinformation. And so that's a great guest to have. I really can't wait to hear from him. And of course, everyone else in our community to hear this interview, please consider going to our Facebook page. We now have a tag at Victoria Rumble Room. So please search us, please like us, please consider watching this interviews. We also have a Twitter handle at Victoria Rumble. Consider liking that if that's the way you get your social media. And thirdly,
share it with your friends.
Share it with your friends, exactly. Put it into your network, because we're really trying to get sort of going a little deeper beyond the 30-second media capture and get into some real facts and understanding of what's going on. But do also consider going to our YouTube site, which is where all of our videos and recordings are inventoried. And with all that information, my name is John Juricic.
And I'm Robin Adair. And rumble on.